Hello everyone, 5 things you need to know about starting in FPV. This is a video that has been spurred by some comments of those that I've received over the years, more so recently obviously, about their path getting started. So if you have your own tips, things that people need to know, please leave those down in the comments section below. But the first thing that I want to start with was your first purchase. When you're buying. Sometimes our expectations, because of the expedited shipping that we can get from companies like Amazon and Walmart and Target and whoever you might be buying stuff from locally, if you buy direct from the manufacturer, just about all of our manufacturers are overseas. Overseas from the US, that is, in China. Now, that could mean it's a long ways away from you if you're in the US, or it could mean you're a short distance if you're closer physical location to China. But if you need to know their shipping practices, their policies, their location, go down to the About section or the FAQ section of their website to find out more. It's important to know that our FPV companies are very small, and their processing of orders doesn't happen like it does for other larger companies like Amazon, Walmart, Target, those big box stores. So you may find if you place an order on, say, a Friday, it doesn't get processed till maybe as much as Tuesday, maybe even longer depending upon holidays, because in China they have different holidays than we might have in other locations as well. And also look at their shipping. Who do they use for a shipper? Look into how they process things, how quickly it can get to you. So a couple things to watch out for then. Of course, when you're buying your first FPV product and you're buying it from a reseller that's local to you, when I say local, I mean relatively close, because not too many of us live next door or down the street from an FPV shop. In the US, I think some of the bigger FPV shops you might think of tinywoop.com, WeBleed, Get FPV, Race Day Quads, Pyro Drone. Those are the few that come to my mind just kind of off the top of my head. And if you're in the US, those companies are all kind of known for pretty fast order processing as well as shipping. And some of those companies offer international shipping as well, but those are things that you need to look out for. So we might have to reset our expectations depending upon where we buy. Of course, if you buy from somebody closer, you probably have to wait longer for the product to reach that reseller than potentially if you were to buy direct from the manufacturer and be able to get your order in kind of first. Hold the phone here. So it's also important to note that once the seller has put the package, your order, in the shipper's hands, there's not much they can do. I've been through this myself with giveaways that, tracking isn't working or it doesn't show the package moving. What can we do? And really, there's not much for the seller to do. They can submit an inquiry into the shipper and ask them to track the package down and to find it. 9 times out of 10, what'll happen is the package will arrive at its destination or it'll be returned before you ever get a response back from the shipper. I've been through this a few times. I've actually had packages that have come back after 6 months and I've got no response from the shipper. Of course, I'm just one guy, but shipping times, they can also vary. And sometimes the further away it is, maybe it takes weeks to get to you. Maybe. If you're physically closer, then it's probably going to be more reliable and it's probably going to be something that arrives about when you expect it to. But as I say, having your patient pants on sometimes, it's kind of the best practice. Along with your first purchase is kind of a sensitive topic of warranty. Again, if you compare to larger, more box store type of things, and they have a return policy that's just kind of just blanket return anything, FPV is not the same way. There's essentially, in many ways, no warranty on stuff. And some of that is due to the nature of this hobby. You buy something, you fly it, you crash it. Well, it worked until you crashed it. So there's no returning that product, although I have read about others having an experience that they weren't happy with as far as something flying and then crashing and then it not working anymore and then pursuing a return. Unless you're buying from Amazon, Target, Walmart, those big box stores or whatever box stores you might have near you, and they're, completely open return processing, it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to get a warranty return on product. Now you can, again, if your reseller is close to you, your chances of having some sort of a return for a dead-on arrival product or a product that's faulty in some way is much greater than from the manufacturer. The best thing you can do to try to get any sort of warranty, whether you're buying from a reseller or directly from the manufacturer, is when you get the box, is to just take a video of you opening the box and getting the product out. Take another video if it uses a battery and your first battery plug-in. Pretty much if you've soldered on something, it's yours now, because there's really no way for the manufacturer or the reseller to know if you know what you're doing when it comes to soldering. Did you use too much temperature for too long? Did you use flux? Did you use good rosin core solder? There's all these variables, and heat from our soldering iron is not friendly to electronic components. We need to get in, we need to get out. And speaking of soldering, that comes up to our third thing, is you probably need to learn to solder. Joshua Bardwell has got a good video on soldering and a tutorial board that came from Diatone. Actually, I haven't watched it, but I saw the thumbnail, and he does a very good job covering all the topics that he does on his channel. So I would encourage you to watch his video, and I will link it down in the video description. But there are a few cases in micros specifically where you can get away with being in this hobby and not needing to know how to solder. It might mean you have to spend more money, but you might not have to solder, because in micros, we'll have motor connectors and we'll have camera connections and a built-in VTX connection as well. So there's a chance, if you stay with that select group of quads, that you won't need to know how to solder, but it's a useful skill, of course, to know. And number 4 is it's going to cost a lot more than you probably expect. FPV quads, we tend to try to push our own skill set, and we try to do fancy maneuvers, whether you call those tricks or just freestyling, or maybe we're not even really freestyling, we're just cruising. But we tend to break stuff. It's a flying vehicle, and we're prone to error sometimes. And so when you get started, don't think of your initial purchase as your total investment. It's going to pile up over the years, and I know many of you can attest to that. Sometimes I hear from people getting started in FPV that they'll see a freestyle video from a top-line pilot of some sort, and they'll think, oh, okay, I'm going to get this quad, and then I am going to go fly like that. Oh, no. That's not going to happen right away. What's not covered in some of those videos is probably the thousands or tens of thousands of dollars that those pilots have spent in order to accumulate and build their skills over a course of time. So your initial investment in an FPV quad is going to be the first investment, but it won't be the last investment. These are not camera drones. They don't fly themselves. They don't go up in the air and hover off a GPS or anything like that. These are quads where you're pretty much in full control of, and you're fully responsible for what happens once they get in the air too. And the last thing, in no particular order, is to start with an FPV simulator. So buy your radio and then use an FPV simulator. Now, full disclosure, I don't sim much. There are a lot of people who sim far more than I do. Matter of fact, I would think most people do, because it's actually pretty rare that unless I'm testing a radio, I don't sim at all. I'm usually doing other things when I'm in front of the computer. So a little bit of an odd case there. But after you buy your radio, get it connected to your computer and run an FPV simulator. FPV simulators don't require a high amount of processing power. It's not like our big-time traditional PC games that you might experience, to where you have to spend $2,000 on a desktop computer and you have to have a monitor with a really low millisecond response or refresh rate on it. Most of the FPV simulators will run on a relatively modest hardware spec on their PCs. And I think the most probably popular one is probably Velocidrone. Of course, there are others. Early on, when I got started, FPV Freerider was one that I used. Matter of fact, I think Joshua Bardwell kind of started his channel making tutorials on FPV Freerider and how to do things within that. I think FPV Freerider is still around. I think it's got a separate name, FPV Freerider something, but Velocidrone is very well known. TinyWhoopGo.com, that's a free one that just, you have to give them your email address and they send you the download link for you to be able to get TinyWhoop Go going on yours. There might be some other free ones too. Again, I don't sim much, but there's two reasons for simming. First off, is one, you get kind of used to the sticks. Even if you're used to flying fixed wing or helicopters or RC in general, it's probably worth the value of an FPV simulator and just kind of getting used to the sticks, the coordinated turns, some basic maneuvers. Throttle management is a big one as well. But the second thing that you can do is get an idea about how you're going to be impacted by the movement. Now, it's not the same experiences as being in the goggles, but at least if you can look at the screen and you can fly around and you can have all that motion, you have some assurance that you won't be getting too sick. Some people, even myself, initially when we got started, you experienced some dizziness. Maybe you didn't, some nausea, you didn't feel very well. But that will give you some idea whether it's just something that you're not going to be able to do. Like my wife, she gets motion sick in the car. Like if she looks down and reads a book while we're going down the road, she has to make sure she looks up every once in a while on a relatively short interval. So if you're prone to something like that, then FPV is going to be pretty tough. I'm not saying you can't train yourself out of that. I don't know, but it should give you some assurance that if you're using an FPV simulator, that you won't be getting terrible dizzy. At the very least, it's something that you can possibly overcome. But if you get real sick and you don't feel very well and your dizziness is pretty severe, that might be a separate case where maybe FPV isn't really all that viable for you. Sorry. Those are just 5 things I thought I could throw out there. Again, if you're new to FPV or if you're a veteran pilot, leave any sort of tips or comments that you might have about these particular things. Maybe you have your own video that you've made on it. Link it down in the video description. It'll probably get slurped off by YouTube, and then I'll go back into the held for review section of the channel and approve those as I go through them. And if you're looking into FPV, I think this comment section specifically might be very valuable to you. So I would encourage you to maybe share it with others if this is something that you think is valid and useful for those people. Again, leave your tips, your comments, your details, your experiences about getting started in FPV down in the comment section. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.